Thank you. Garu Amatya Ravi Karunanayake Mettuwa.
Honorable Presiding Officer, the 11th of August 2016 was an important day in the modern history of our country. It was also an important day for this House. On that day, this House unanimously approved the bill that was before us on the establishing of an Office of Missing Persons. By taking this important step to establish an office on a missing persons by Act of Parliament, we sent an important message to all the people of our country, a message which echoed through the world. After two insurrections in the south of our country and after prolonged conflict in the north and the east, we showed the world that day that we have now turned a new leaf in our nation's journey. We showed the world that this House is united by compassion for all the people in all parts of the country who have suffered the fate of having their loved ones join the ranks of category called missing persons. We also told the people of our country, loud and clear, that this House stands firm in protecting the fundamental rights of all Sri Lankans provided for in the Constitution of our country and helping to heal the wounds of our people. We united that day to show the world by our actions that we in these nations are in fact guided by the teachings of Gautama Buddha, that we are governed in our actions by compassion for grieving mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers in our country. As you are aware, Honorable Presiding Officer, the mothers and fathers agonizing over their missing children and their wives and children grieving over their missing husbands and parents is not a phenomenon that is confined to any particular part of the country. There are over 5,000 missing security forces personnel in this country. There are mothers, fathers, wives, children, sisters, and brothers are still waiting to know what happened to them. There are mothers and fathers in the south of our country who have been grieving for their missing children for 1980 and 1990s and still living with the hope of finding out their fate. The mothers of the north and the east of our country continue to fast and go on processions, grieving and crying and urging us to find their missing children. Honorable Presiding Officer, today we have before this House an amendment to Act that was adopted on the 11th of August and certified on the 23rd of August last year. This amendment, which was proposed in this House on the 11th of August, could not be incorporated before the approval of the bill on that day due to atmosphere that prevailed in the House. Therefore, steps have been taken to introduce this amendment through this bill that is before us today. I urge all members of this House to support this amendment. His Excellency President Maithripala Sirisena just last week demonstrated his statesmanship, the empathy, humanness, and respect for grieving families and missing during his visit to Jaffna. Those families, like the families of the missing from all regions of our country, were consulted during the island-wide consultations conducted by the Consultation Task Force last year, long for clarity about the fate of the loved ones. Our Prime Minister has been echoing this message for the last couple of decades. On that basis, natural justice should take place, and he has been leading this from the forefront from all ends. Honorable Presiding Officer, this office is not our country's first attempt to resolve cases of the missing. Previous attempts included steps taken during the 1990s and the Paranagama Commission. However, they were not comprehensive in nature and were limited in scope. This office is of permanent nature and has a broad mandate given by this House to search for and trace missing persons and to clarify the circumstances of their disappearance. It will be tasked with the centralizing of all available data on missing persons and will make recommendations to relevant authorities to protect the rights and the interests of the missing persons and their relatives. It will also make recommendations aimed at making sure that the incidents of this nature will not happen in the future in our country. It will serve as a reminder to future generations of our country of the importance of ensuring that problems are resolved through peaceful means. It will be a reminder to us, all of the youth from all parts of our country, that this nation lost and help us and generations to come to resolve to never allow a repetition of such horrors. The Office of the Missing Persons, Honorable Presiding Officer, will not prioritize the missing and disappeared of one community over another. It will investigate the circumstances of the missing irrespective of the date of disappearance. Members of the armed forces and the police missing in action, those missing in context of the conflict in the north and the eastern provinces, and those missing from political unrest, civil disturbances from earlier decades will also fall within the Office of the Missing Persons Office mandate. Honourable Presiding Officers, some of the honourable members of Parliament have attempted to mislead with this House the public of this country by stating that this office has prosecutorial and judicial mandate. If they only spend some time to read the Act carefully, they will realize that the mandate of this office is purely humanitarian. It does not have any prosecutorial or judicial powers. Its aim is to ensure that we find answers for grieving families, and we ensure that we take required steps to make the people of our country enjoy sustainable peace and prosperity, at the least in the future. With no chances of horror of violence and pain that the people of this country had to face in the past ever being repeated again. Honourable Presiding Officer, this is not an issue to be politicized. The question of the missing is a critical humanitarian concern. Every human being with an ounce of compassion can relate to the anguish of their families who don't know what happened to their loved ones. If one of our children, if one of our brothers or sisters were to vanish without a trace, imagine how distraught each one of us would be. If years passed since the incident without a sign from us to mourn or hope, our pain would not diminish. We would always wonder what happened to them. We would continue to wonder whether they are alive or whether they are dead. We could carry the agony of not knowing what happened to them all the way to our graves, while our children and grandchildren will also continue carry this pain. As a responsible government, as a responsible state, as a responsible community, and as a responsible people who care for our fellow citizens, we must unite to take steps to establish this office without delay and show that we are compassionate nature. Thank you, sir.
Bom Stuti.